really doing a good service to the agricultural industry by upcycling that rice husk, putting it into a product, displacing polymer, and then it gives us a benefit on the performance, which is just amazing. We always just say it just makes sense, right? What we're doing.
Welcome to another episode of Stocked and Delivered. I'm your host, Mike Goodman, along with my co-host, Todd London. Today we have a very special guest, Chris, the founder of Modern Mill. Chris, good to have you today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
As you mentioned, we also have Chandler Delinks on. Chandler is the regional sales manager in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic markets. He's been a real help for us actually growing this product. And Chris, we're excited for a couple of reasons. I think first, your story of taking this product that no one heard of to being kind of a boom out of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic specifically that I can speak to. I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more as a larger geographic swath. But this came on the scene like a wildfire. And so I think we're interested today to learn about you, the company story, what that comes along with, whether it be private equity backed or funding money or what the challenges of building a new company are, and then everything else that the product kind of, so aptly boasts that I think your average person would see along the way. I guess to get started, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in New Hampshire. So born and raised in New England, went to school at UMass at Lowell, plastics engineering. So that sort of got me into this space. I would say just in general, have a bachelor's and master's degree in plastics engineering. Developed a bunch of companies over years, had a lot of experience in manufacturing and in just the general idea of combining, fillers with polymer materials, right? I going back to even grad school, I worked on some formulations of some. I remember back in the day, I was taking some polyethylene, some calcium carbonate, some other fillers, and created this highly filled polyethylene compounds for those that was more for fire rating. But my experience and my interest has always sort of been in and around, I would say, just recycling, composites, that type of thing within the realm of plastics engineering. So as an entrepreneur, developed a bunch of companies over the years, eventually came across sort of an underutilized technology that took this really kind of formulaic intellectual properties around rice husks and polymer materials, but felt it was very underutilized. So essentially took that and morphed it into today what is Acre by Modern Mill. And I would just say high level, what are we doing? We take in rice husks, we grind them, we mix a compound, we extrude a board, and now we're in what we call the modern mill. It's a modern take on a sawmill. So instead of cutting down trees, we're upcycling rice husks and making a product that looks and feels just like wood. So super exciting. One of the most exciting things I've ever worked on. And to your point, I think the industry was ready for something innovative and something that was game changing. And that's really what our product is. It combines the best of what a composite is with the best of what either anything old growth hardwood or softwood type lumber would offer, right? So you don't have to maintenance it, but you have something that looks and feels like hardwood, sustainable, beautiful product. So the industry is really ready for that. And I think that's one of the most exciting things that we were able to experience in this process was just wild adoption, quick and fast. So it's been great.
Yeah, that's great. It really is great. A great product. I want to talk more about Modern Mill and Acre in a moment, but it sounds like you're a serial entrepreneur. You've had a lot of goes at it with different companies. Can you tell us a little more about things you've done and kind of what led you to just like moving on to the Acre? Like what transition in your life that had the new idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think since I was a kid, I was always an entrepreneur, right? I mean, I've just always enjoyed the concept of where there was nothing, now there's something, right? That process has always been fascinating to me, right? Oh, there's nothing here today, and then tomorrow or a year or 2 years later, there's something, and something could, the more substantial, the more exciting it can be, right? So I think the roots for myself personally are just having that entrepreneurial spirit, always loving that something to nothing or that nothing to something process is always been extremely exciting, and that's what's driven me, I would say. And then in terms of some of the things that I've worked on in my career. When I first finished grad school, I would say there was three things I was interested in. One was the composites, as I sort of mentioned. Two was recycling, and then three was medical devices. So I actually took a job out in California, working for a company as an engineer, working on medical devices, and I enjoyed that as well. But I think along the way, I was always thinking about how to get back into doing something more scalable, larger. So in my early career, started working for some commodity trading companies and understanding sort of that business, how to grow and scale a commodity-based trading company. So that was one of the things that I've worked on over the years. And then eventually just really understanding and thinking about manufacturing, right? And again, that's that nothing to something. There was once nothing, now there's this manufacturing plant. That's always fascinated me, of saying, and I also like the idea of making stuff, right? At the very core, and I think this is a very timely topic in today's world, especially with manufacturing coming back to the US. I think it's crucial that we manufacture stuff, right? Whatever that stuff is. And I remember who said it, but somebody said, if you don't make stuff, you don't have stuff, right? So it's important to make stuff to be able to sell stuff, and we can all buy the stuff that we use every day. So that's always been a fascinating um, opportunity industry to look at. So we worked on some manufacturing plants over the years, anything from packaging to extrusion, and then eventually just they were exciting, but not as exciting as this, right? Because I think when you start talking about addressing deforestation, all of a sudden other people become very interested in what you're doing, especially in terms of investors, or the opportunity to grow and scale a company, the opportunity to develop a brand. And that's really where the excitement has come from, as of late, and along the way.
So, and what was the precipice for this coming? Did someone have an idea? Did you have an idea? You were thinking about it for a long time. Did someone bring it to you, or how did it all come to be that you went all in on Modern Mill?
Yeah, like I said, so there was a technology that was originally developed, and people have been trying to do this for a long time, I would say, right? Take any type of natural um, fillers, right? And that could be anything from rice husks to any other natural filler that you can think of that's out there. It could be hemp, could be corn, could be whatever, right? People can take these different types of fillers. Wood, right, as an example, right? WPC, wood plastic composite. So there's always been sort of an excitement around that for me, and then seeing where in that world could we sort of take something and move it forward. So we looked around and came across a technology that, like I said, was more of a formulaic IP, but heavily underutilized, to the point where it really wasn't, there was really not a market. There wasn't any market. There wasn't really anything happening at all in terms of what we're doing today, like Acre by Modern Mills. So we took that formulaic as a baseline, and we had to morph it into what it is today. And that morph really was around the formulation itself, right? Changing, adjusting parameters within the formulation, and then also on the process side, right? What are we doing with that compound material to make it into what the product is today? Talk about, like you said, after some of the features and benefits, but when you think about that morph, we're not looking to just do another WPC technology, right? There's plenty of those to just do another deck board. We're just looking to do another siding product and extruded, profile, like that we've all seen for a long time. We were looking to really take it to the next level. So what we found in this sort of morph of the technology was recognizing we could create something that looked and felt like wood. The appearance was there, the grain was there, and I would say, in combination of, as this was all happening, is thinking through the deforestation piece, right? There's an increased supply. There's an increased demand and a decreased supply, which means there's going to be a continued market for us, right? And when I looked around within the industry, there was basically nothing in terms of especially a sustainable composite material that looked and felt like wood, and especially that you could work with it like wood. Traditional tools, drops like sawdust, no silica dust. Those were all the things that we're looking for. So in that morph of that initial sort of find, I would say, to what it is today, it's around formula, it's around process, and then it's around even sort of downstream from that. How do we code it? The credentialing, what markets are we going to go into? The development of the SKUs. So there was a lot in that. But yeah, the roots of it, I would just say, one is a strong interest in the world of composites and recycling, right? A background in plastics engineering, and then ultimately recognizing an underutilized technology that could be brought to the next level, right? And that's really what we did. And people do ask all the time, well, why hasn't somebody else done this? And again, people have tried for a long time. When we first got into this, people would show up and be like, oh, I have a rice hull polymer composite too. And I would look at it and it didn't look like what our product looks like, not even close. So there's a reason that some of the earlier iterations never got to what we brought this to. So I would say we've been able to take something that people have been trying to do probably for a long time and really develop it into something that is the features and benefits um, are just this next level of performance and look and feel aesthetic, where people really love the product.
If I've done my research correctly, maybe I haven't, but it sounds like you found the IP in Germany on a trip to Germany. Is that right? What were you doing? Is your whole story serendipitous? You accidentally went for plastics. You accidentally went on a trip to Germany and found this thing and then put the pieces together. How did this all come to be?
That's funny. I think Chandler and I were just talking about that earlier. When people say, how did you get into plastics engineering? That answer sometimes is fate. I don't know. I don't know how. I think growing up in New Hampshire it was very serendipitous that UMass at Lowell was 45 minutes from where I grew up in New Hampshire, right? So I think that answers that first question. I would say the technology that originated or was the final formulated in Germany is kind of what I would say. It's where some of the IP was developed around that. That was originally we came across it in the U.S. and then went to Germany to further evaluate that technology when we started to get very serious about it. But yeah, it was an originally we just kind of came across it within the U.S. Some samples were sent or whatever, just kind of looking at it and understanding, okay, this is cool. It's something that you could do something with it, but nothing like what we wanted to do with it. So then there's a process of taking it from what it was to that next level, and then obviously taking trips to Germany and other parts of the world to understand like what technology is going to be required to do this in terms of not just understanding the IP and what in the ingredients and what goes into the formula, but also the equipment, right? There's a big piece of this that is you have to really understand know-how, skill set, and really understand manufacturing, right? Because I would just say high level, you have whatever you do at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon at the manufacturing, you have to be able to accomplish at 2 in the morning on a Sunday, right? And so there's a lot of things that go into making that happen. So there's this big know-how piece, right? That was really had to be understood. Everything from the compounding equipment to the grinding equipment to the extrusion equipment to the tooling to the downstream. So a lot of that over the years is just travel really all over the world, but particularly I would say Asia, Germany, amongst other places.
Without getting terribly into the building science portion of this, what makes the rice hull technology so special? And how come now? It feels as if we've had rice hulls for as long as, hundreds of centuries. What is making this product perform so well? What is it about this technology that makes it so special?
Yeah, I mean, we're levering the properties of the rice husk, right? So if you think about what does the rice husk do, it protects the rice while it grows. So it ultimately protects from moisture, pests, insects, things like that as it's growing, mold, fungus, like anything like that. That's the whole job of a rice husk is to protect the rice while it grows. So we're taking that throwaway agricultural product, we're upcycling it, we're grinding it, and we're levering the properties that it ultimately presents while it's protecting the rice. So when we think about how does that then fold into our building material performance, it creates this moisture resistance, right? So the fact that our product, neither the rice hull nor the resin really absorb moisture means that your substrate material is not absorbing moisture. So then we apply that coating, a water-based stain or paint, there isn't moisture getting in between the substrate material and the coating, thereby causing it to fail. So if we think about just from a high level performance, what's one reason people buy our product? They love the fact that it's a one and done thing. You put it on the side of your house. I'm looking at this house where I sit today. There's an acre fence outside. It's been there for 5 years through all types of weather and storms. It literally looks like the day we put it down. There's virtually been no fading. There's been no peeling, no rotting, no rusting, nothing. So I think the performance aspect of it is we're levering the properties of that rice husk along with the polymer and some of the other additives that create that really low maintenance aspect of what we're doing. The other part of what we're doing is the ability to take that stain or paint, right? So if you think about just a typical piece of just say PVC, right? Generally, you have to prime it, you have to use a certain type of paint, and you're not going to, even if you could find something that's stainable, it's not going to look like a stained piece of wood. So that's the other aspect of what the rice hull delivers for us is this stainability, right? We always call, like, if you take a piece of acre and you look at it, we always say that's the acre grain, right? When you take a water-based stain or paint, just wipe over that, especially on the stain side, you really see that grain pop through. So the rice husk high level would be adding a big aspect on the performance side and then adding a big aspect on the coating side. So those two things coming together is really what's create a game change product. And obviously the big one is it looks and feels like a piece of wood, almost indistinguishable from ipe, mahogany, cedar, those types of materials. So when people see it, it's like, wow, is that you really actually want to go up to it and touch it. We have what's called and I would just say there's a broader category of biophilic design that our product really allows people to tap into. So that biophilic nature of the product, it creates this warmth, this beauty. You could also use it interior, right? So you could use this as a product you could use interior, and you could whatever you can do with wood minus structural, right? We're not trying to replace 2x4s. You can do with our product. So I'd say the versatility is the other aspect that the rice hulls, along with the technology that we've developed, allows us to create.
Incredible. I'll pay your company a compliment here. So if you think about all the hardboard sidings in the marketplace right now, they are all trying to be some type of wood for grain or whatever it may be, and they do a varying good job. I think Acre does a better job. I think if you're to look at the problems and the pain points that the industry would give you on the other hardboard is moisture one. The fact that you have to coat the cut end. It's the fact that you have to install 2 inches off of grade and 6 inches, 6 inches off of grade, 2 inches off a roof line. It's the fact that if you go through a free thaw cycle, you're going to have problems with the board potentially. Acre has done a good job, really, in both figuring out, hey, a more true, authentic aesthetic, and B, a better performing board. And so for all those things, it's not shocking to believe that we've seen some success as a result of this. And then to add to his point, I had a chance to go to the Acre facility, and literally their entire office is all Acre. So when you think about like the actual applications of everything that you can do, it's absolutely incredible.
It's amazing that the technology, and I think it's coming from rice, right? It's just unbelievable when you don't really know too much about this world. You're in it, you see it every day. To like the layman to know that a product is made with that would just be like shocking to know that, and it's such a great product.
Can we talk about?
Go ahead.
I just like to tell people it just makes sense, right? What are we really doing? We're displacing polymer with a throwaway agricultural product that then adds an increase in your performance, right? And ultimately, it's decreasing an expensive part of your product, right? So it just makes sense. And by the way, why just continue to throw away rice husks, right? That's a problem for the U.S., right? We grow a lot of rice here, right? Particularly Louisiana, Mississippi, which, by the way, that's why our manufacturing plant is in Mississippi. We're close to where the rice husks grow. But we think about Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, California, Missouri, I think is the sixth rice producing state. There's a lot of throwaway agriculture product that is created from that. Yet a good amount of those rice, the actual finished rice, gets exported because we don't eat a lot of rice here as compared to a lot of other nations. So we're exporting a bunch of the finished product, but 100%, generally speaking, of the agricultural throwaway product gets left behind. So we're really doing a good service to the agricultural industry by upcycling that rice husk. I mean, it's a real problem for them. They have a surplus of these things because you can imagine the amount of rice that's grown. So we're doing something that really makes sense, taking a throwaway agricultural product, upcycling it, putting it into a product, displacing polymer, and then it gives us a benefit on the performance, which is just amazing. So we always just say it just makes sense, right? What we're doing.
No, it makes sense. And it's cool that you're the one that figured that out, right? Not everyone figured. Sometimes the easiest things are the things that make the most sense. It takes a lot of time to figure out, and someone unique to figure it out. So, kudos to you for being that person. So So I'm gonna talk about the journey. So when was that time you were either in Germany or when you were like, we're gonna do this? How long ago was that?
I mean, so I would say probably about 5 years ago, right, is when all this really got started. And we've been working on, like, my whole life is kind of like, I always think about when I think about that question, it's kind of my whole life has been preparation for this, right? It's really been a combination of understanding a lot of things, especially around growing and scaling companies, commodity-based companies, manufacturing, and then really understanding how to utilize resources, right? Because and of course, great bringing on incredible talent like Chandler is on this call with us. It's amazing to find great people to help us to do that. So I think it feels like my whole life's been preparing for that. But yeah, I'd say about 5 years ago is when we really started figuring it all out in terms of how are we going to get from where we are today to where we need to be, right? Which obviously there's a process associated with that. Figuring out where you're going to put it, right? Mississippi made sense for us because it's close to where we the rice is grown, right? Where we can get the feedstock. Also, you have petrochemicals there. We have a great petrochemical infrastructure in the southeast in general. Great shipping. I always say we have people, ports, and power in the southeast, right? We have people that want to work and are great workers, great skill sets. We have power, right? So we have affordable power to be able to run manufacturing plants, and we have ports to be able to bring things in and out. I would say the fourth piece, petrochemicals, right? There's been a massive increase in the petrochemical landscape in the southeast, so that just allows us to have really good raw material input. So figuring out where it was going to be had to be in the southeast. We like Mississippi. Again, proximity to all of that stuff, and then it's a process, right? Of procuring equipment, raising capital, and then kind of going through that process to get it where it is. But yeah, I'd say about 5 years ago is when it all really started. Our first production year was probably 21, and then we've just been growing every year since then. And of course, like probably a lot of people got slowed down a little bit by COVID, right? Because you have hopes and dreams and plans, and all of a sudden that gets derailed because you can't do things. But just got to continue to persevere and figure out a way, which is what we did.
Congrats. 5 years. You did a lot. You've done a lot. You're probably going to do a lot more, but a lot in 5 years. So, and I want to go back to that journey. So it's 5 years ago. You have the idea. You think you're onto something. Now what? Like, how much money do I raise? How big do I want to get? Am I going to sell this everywhere? Do I think this is 100 million, $1 billion company? Like, what goes through your mind? How big are you going to get? How leverage are you going to get? Tell us a little bit what was happening then.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you start to think about is what is the total addressable market, right? That's probably one of the first big things you think about when you're thinking about an endeavor like this. You don't want to spend a bunch of money to then just go after something small that doesn't provide. And I guess if you were going to go after something small, there should be this massive margin so that you're either playing in volume or margin. And again, just the background and what I've always experienced in business, it's always one of those two angles. Are you playing in volume or are you playing in margin? If you're playing in margin, it's good, and usually it's a much smaller market. If you're playing in volume, it's generally starts to be a commodity type opportunity like we're looking at. So evaluating the total addressable market, I think, was a first step in that. And then yeah, and I think the early part, I think for me, was the excitement around addressing deforestation, right? We can, if people say, what is modern mill, right? We always say, don't cut down old growth trees. We as a society cannot continue to cut down old growth trees. Like, people have a hard time winning that argument, right? You can't tell me, yeah, we can keep cutting down old growth trees and all good, right? In our lifetime, those old growth trees will not be regrown, right? Unless somebody creates some technology of some kind of a miracle growth that we're all unaware of. But in a general sense, if you think about cutting down old growth trees, that in of itself has to end. So I think the excitement around what we were doing and recognizing how close our product looked and felt to something old growth, whether it's softwood or hardwood, whether it's cedar or whether it's ipe, was really exciting. And then that excitement is sort of what caught the attention of people in our ecosystem, right? In our sphere. That's like, oh wow, what are you doing? Love to learn more. Love to take a look at it. So then, in terms of thinking about the size of it, just again in my background, it's if you're going to set up a big manufacturing plant, you need to be thinking about scale, right? Because otherwise, just to turn on the facility to make it go around, you need a foundational scale in order to just create an initial sort of break even, right? Before you really start to be able to make money and apply the levers to bring up your efficiencies and bring up your margins ultimately, right? So I think that's the I think looking at the need, right? Is there going to be a need for this product? That's probably the first thing to look at, and that was a solid yes, right? Because you have a decreased supply of old growth trees. And at the same time, if you flip over to the composite world, you had a lot of people that were generally had a complaint or two or five or 10 about other composites that were out there. So we were trying to accomplish both of those things. Can we fit in where this old growth tree thing is an issue? And can we fit into where a lot of people have these complaints around these other composites? Now, what composites were we thinking about at the time? Siding, trim, sheets, porch flooring, decking, column wraps, soffit, fascia, like any sort of exterior um, composite technology that was being used in building products. You could just sort of poll people, and they go, yeah, here's why I don't like this, that, and the other thing. So we were really looking at it through that lens. So if we can hit the old growth tree issue, stop cutting those down, and really make an impact in deforestation and upcycling rice husks, which again is another problem, throwaway agricultural product, and then also addressing where a lot of these composites were sort of falling short, maybe accomplishing certain goals, but falling short in others. And then thinking about total addressable market, that started to dictate how big does that manufacturing plant have to be, right? So we always started thinking at the beginning, well, we're not looking to sell 5 trucks a month of this stuff, right? We're looking to grow this to a pretty large opportunity, right? I mean, revenue wise, you can sort of look around in the industry to see what other sort of competitive companies are targeting for revenues, or what those look like. And by the way, the majority or a lot of that market is still coming from taking it away from wood, right? So if you think about where a lot of other composite companies got their start, they said, oh, wood's being used here. Let's go into that market and start to take away market share from what is wood. And that's wood is generally still the largest, depending upon what vertical we're talking about, is generally the largest used product in the space. So we knew that the wood was definitely there, and then we knew that the composites with some of those issues was definitely there. And then you start to look at what other companies do within that space. Yeah, it starts to be a big number, right? So if it's a big number, we're not building a small plant, we're building a large plant, and then we're eventually thinking about doing 3 plants, and we're thinking about North America, and we're thinking about other parts of the world, right? Because you start to get interest from all places around the world. They're saying, "Oh wow, I'd love to take a look at that." And I think as we've developed our brand, what we sort of stand for, our credentialing, and people can start to understand what is our product, how can it be used, it starts to inherently open up other markets, which is phenomenal for us.
So, Acre said in the past that they think they control a world where profit and purpose exists. You ever find that being a conflict in terms of trying to run this business? You've just kind of explained to us in a number of ways that A, really great for the environment. You're stopping deforestation. You're helping recycle material that would have otherwise been waste. And B, you're going to be a big company. How do you balance that idea of purpose and profit as the CEO of the company?
Um, it's a great question. I mean, I think sustainability has to be looked at through a couple of lenses, right? One lens, and we always like to be pretty clear about this. Like our pricing is generally very competitive. Like a lot of people think, oh, sustainable product, that must be 3x the price. Again, depends on what you're comparing it to, but in general, right, in our class of other composites, and certainly in some of the woods we mentioned, we're very price competitive. So when we think about sustainability is important from the standpoint of upcycling rice hulls and not cutting down old growth trees. Those are the two main sort of premises of the company. And then there's a bunch of others, right? Zero waste manufacturing, right? Every bit of scrap and sawdust we make, we put back into the process, where we're generally not, creating any waste. And there's a bunch of other pillars of the traditional lens of sustainability, but sustainability also needs to be extended into the financial aspects of this, right? Are you going to be there in the next, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Because creating a sustainable company is very important. So I'd say the balance of those things, we're always focused on that first part of that, which is the purpose, right? What are we here to do? We're here to address deforestation. We're here to upcycle rice husks. We're here to create an amazing product, something totally game changing, differentiating to the market. But we're also here to perform financially and be an amazing company, to be able to be here long term, to be able to deliver on that purpose, right? So I think the long term aspect of the company, there needs to be an economic sustainability to be able to deliver on the initial purpose of the company. And I think that's, if you look oftentimes that's where sometimes people get it wrong, right? They're heavily focused on purpose, but there isn't really a sustainable path to allow that purpose to come into reality and create adoption and everything else. And I think the big starting point for that is understanding that our product is very, very, very competitively priced to anything within the realm of what we're selling into, particularly siding, trim boards, those types of things. And again, we're not saying the cheapest of the cheap stuff, but we're saying in our class of products, we're very competitive. So there isn't this premium. So I think figuring out that is very important. The economic sustainability backing into, can this support the purpose of what the company is? And there's many other purposes besides sustainability. We also have a purpose of bringing manufacturing back to the United States of America, right? We have a purpose of bringing manufacturing into rural communities that it can really benefit, right? And our story is one of those. When we first went to this location, there wasn't a lot there. And if you look 5 years later now there's a Coca-Cola bottling plant, there's a John Deere facility, there's right around the corner from us. I think it was an $85 million expansion of this sort of building that didn't look great and it now looks beautiful. So it's that build it and they will come mindset. And we've really tried to sort of lead the way. And I like to think about this maybe in the sense of what Malcolm Gladwell used to write about in the tipping point, right? Like there's a certain point that when you shift the context, the content starts to shift, and that's definitely what we've seen where we're at. That's the purpose of what we're doing. But again, those purposes need to be supported by an economic sustainability, and it just has to make sense of what you're doing. So what we're doing is taking a relatively cheap throwaway agricultural product, displacing a relatively not super expensive, but a relatively expensive polymer as compared to that throwaway ag product, displacing that. So we're creating the economics that start to work on the formulation side, and then we're making it into a product that performs incredible. So that people really want to take it on, adopt it, and obviously you have to figure out where is that going to go in terms of what products you're going to do. So we've worked on all that stuff, but I would say it's the balance of those two things to round out the answer to the question is creating long-term sustainability from an economic standpoint to really back into what is your purpose to make sure that we can execute that strategy.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, I just want to jump in here real quick on that, just because it reminds me of a story when you guys are talking through the history. It's I think Chris is being pretty humble about a lot of this stuff, and it's been pretty fascinating to sit sort of sidecar to some of this stuff and going back to the original opportunity and meeting Chris and exploring this opportunity, the product and the interest and the applications and all that versatility. But that really came up really early. And Chris, it reminds me of when we were first going out to market, and we were bringing the market to, we started with a lot of manufacturers, OEMs, right? We could make sheet goods and we bring these products to them and we'd introduce it and say, hey, this is Acre, upcycle rice hulls, and it's sustainable. And it was I had this aha moment, and I won't mention names or companies, but I met with a guy who was using a competitive plastic product. And when we came to him, the price was, I want to say 30% less than what he was using. We were sustainable. We looked like wood. He was trying to make things look like wood, but could withstand all the environment. And I remember saying to him, I said, and hey, it's made up of more than 50% by volume upcycled rice hulls. I was like, so it's sustainable too. And he looked at me and he goes, I don't care about that. And I thought to myself, well, even if you don't, you still use a sustainable product. So we still win, right? Like that's where the benefit, when Chris is talking about the upcycled rice hulls and the supply of these rice hulls in the US exporting over 20 billion pounds of rice every year, and every rice grain being covered in a rice hull, like just the scalability and what Chris has built from this manufacturing. And I think he's being very modest in terms of the complications of getting that manufacturing up and running and all the things that we've accomplished in the last 5 or 6 years. But knowing that it is servicing this addressable need. And we keep going back to it where it just makes sense, is that no matter what, right, when you come to people and when they use Acre, they're using a sustainable product, whether they care about it or not, they're still using it because guess what? It's still better than the less sustainable products that are out there. So from a salesperson's perspective in the group that I lead, this is something for us that is really exciting, because when we talk to an architect, a homeowner, a builder, contractor, a designer, or even our lumber partners, right? Everybody's looking to do the best they can for the planet and for profitability and for growth and for sustainability. And that's where we feel like this, especially from where I'm sitting and watching it, that it's a win-win, and it does just make sense. So sorry, I just wanted to throw in that little context. It reminded me of this story from 2019 or whatever it was. But
Leads me to my next question. When I was thinking about this, I'll start with Chris, and then Chandler, you can answer this as well. Is so, Chris, you identify the TAM. You're thinking, multiple facilities in North America and maybe global at some point. So you know this is potentially big. You probably need to start raising money, and you're thinking about how quickly you're going to grow, how slowly you're going to grow. At what point do you like? Is there an aha moment? Chandler just mentioned that where you're like, people really do like this product. It really is selling the way we thought it was going to, or people are gravitating the way I anticipated. And anything that comes to mind, Chris, of like when that was and when you were like, we are definitely onto something. Let's keep going faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good news for us is even prior to what Chandler was just talking about, we were already thinking big, right? Because there's this foundational knowing is the only way I can language that. There was just the knowing that this had to get done. There wasn't a lot of like back and forth, should we or shouldn't we? It was like we're going and we're going big. It was like that go big or go home moment. And I think a part of that was the excitement within our circle of influence of sort of feedback of, wow, this is amazing, incredible, love to be a part of this, right? So then that started to create this idea of something big and scalable. And I think the early parts was, what are those products going to be, right? And that's really what Chandler's talking about. It's like we had that at first. The idea might have been, oh, this is like anywhere you can use wood, right? But the problem with too many options is it's too many options. So until we took what was a bigger idea and brought it down to very specific sort of development of SKUs and then credentialing to back those uses, right? So think about siding, right? When we develop like that those aha moments is when let's just see before we go to siding, let's just say trim boards, right? Okay, what are we making? We're making trim boards, okay, and then where are those trim boards going, right? And then getting it to that place of, I mean, Chandler and I always joke around. There was this moment in time of, and this is when we were trying to figure out the manufacturing too, which to Chandler's point is not trivial. It was who makes it and who sells it. And we used to have this back and forth thing like, who makes it? Well, we kind of do. who has it to sell it? Well, nobody yet. And then who wants it, right? There was always this initial sort of back and forth. And then we first start to get some of those pieces in place. Now we can make it. Now people actually are buying it, like on the distributor levels, they have it, and then we had to go around the other end and then create that pull through, because then it's who wants it, right? And I'm preaching the choir with you guys, right? You're in that space, so it's that world of like who makes it, who has it, and then who wants it, and we had to solve all of that. So I think that was the real aha moment, but I wouldn't say that drove to that sort of bigger picture idea. That bigger picture idea was always there at the beginning of, this is going to be big. This is going to be bigger than anything we've ever expected it to be, because the need is there, right? It fundamentally, don't throw away rice husk. It doesn't make sense. Upcycle those and use them. Don't cut down old growth trees. You can't keep doing that. And then there was this other composite thing where it was like there was a lot of shortfalls. So we knew that was going to happen. We just didn't know exactly how. But I would say that secondary aha moment was when we started to create that bigger adoption through the distribution channel. We started to see people, and Chandler always jokes around, says, Chan, what is it? 10 out of 10 builders approve, or because when people touch it, they say yes to acre. They love it, and that was, I would say, the secondary aha moment, is to see how exciting that was. I remember Chandler and I would just be at random places, and he would just go flip down his pickup truck. He'd have a whole setup there, and he'd start demoing it, and everybody. It was just these jaw-dropping moments for everybody, right? And I think that was that secondary sort of aha moment of, okay, we sort of found where this is, and of course, the OEM side, we can still expand upon that. That's not our primary market right now, but there's a huge need within that world that we haven't even really tapped into. The main world we've been going after is just the LBM channel, because that's the lowest hanging fruit and where we've created the most splash and adoption.
So I think we understand what a great idea was. I think we understand what a great technology is. I'd like to dig into what makes Anchor a great company. Can you tell us a little bit about what the leadership philosophy is, what the culture is, how you're building this internally? Because that seems like the last piece of the puzzle. You're getting past visionary to early adopters. You're trying to cross the chasm. That makes sense to me. Now you have a people and a company problem to overcome. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so once we figured out where it was going to be, then it was people, right? Really understanding people, really what are those roles that need to be filled, and how are we going to? Because we're having to figure it out as we're building it, right? So that's never an easy thing, right? As you're building the plane while you're trying to fly, or whatever the expression is, like that was us, right? We're building the plane while we're trying to fly it. So there was certainly trying to figure out who are the right people. I would just say, so let's go to philosophy. From a management philosophy, one of my favorite expressions of all times is the right person doing the right thing the right way, or the right people doing the right things the right way, right? That is quintessential, crucial. We go back to that as sort of North Star. Because if you think about that, if you have the right person doing the wrong thing the right way, that's a problem. It's not going to get you there, right? So one philosophy I would say of management is that right person doing the right thing the right way, and then of course attracting those people, working with those people, um, creating the skill sets that those people need, and creating an environment where those people can thrive. Right? If just think about in where we were, anyways, in rural Mississippi, there when we looked around, there weren't a lot of examples of places that we felt we would want to maybe work per se in the way that we were trying to create modern milk, right? So one of the first things we looked at, and again, I should caveat that because we didn't look at every single manufacturing plant around us, but just in a general sense, in and out of various places, we didn't see this sort of best in class that we were trying to create, right? So a clean manufacturing plant, a place where the break room is sort of best in class. We used our Acre product to build out the break room so that people that are working in the manufacturing plant can go there and experience it and see it, touch it, go, oh wow, this is a real life opportunity of where this works. Yeah, it's on the walls, right? And we bring in, higher quality food for people, right? Because we really want to take care of our people. We offer tuition reimbursement. We, pay more money than maybe the some of the competitive places within the region are. So we really started to think about how can we create an environment that really attracts great people, where people want to stay, and we can continue to improve their skill sets over time. So I think it was a combination of finding that right person, right people, right way, and then developing those people, making sure that they're continuing to do that over time. And then one of my other sort of favorite expressions, and Chandler would know this, is Pareto's law, right? What 20% can you do that's going to make an 80% impact today? So we always ask ourselves that question within the manufacturing facility. If you have 10 things to do today, what two are going to make an 80% impact of what we're doing, whether it's delivering a quality product? And if you just think about any aspect of manufacturing, right? There's a lot going on. It's very important to look at that and figure out what is the couple of things you can do that's going to make the majority of the impact. So I would just say those are two fundamental premises that we lead by, right? And I say the third one is just lead by example, right? So what do you embody as a leader, right? Like, are you representative of what you want to see in the people that you're developing, right? So that sort of self lens is an important one, self awareness, right? And of course, there's always blind spots. Everybody has them, but it's continuing to revisit that, ask those questions, and see, like, are you really leading by example? And we try to bring that throughout the entire leadership team, right? In the way that we talk, in the way that we communicate, in the way that we treat people, in the way, and it doesn't matter which people, right? It doesn't matter if they're employees of Modern Mill, it doesn't matter if they're vendors, suppliers, and anybody in the ecosystem, like really going to that next level of awareness of appreciation, right? And that's the other aspect of this I think is important, right? Is always because it's easy to be discouraged, right? But a surefire remedy to discouragement is appreciation, right? And so one thing we always look at is that.
So through this process, and I'm sure Chandler said it earlier that you're being humble about it, but the challenges along the way, whether it be people related, scaling the company, going too fast, going too slow. Talk a little about what maybe your Pareto the top two challenges of the 10 that you've had along the way that stand out that you like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty easy to answer, right? One is how to make it, two is how to sell it, right? That's just to keep it very simple, right? I always go back to that. Like we're in the business of how to make stuff, and then we're in the business of how to sell stuff, and everything else is essentially details, right? So the how to make stuff, we had to obviously raise capital to create enough runway, right, to be able to get that plane off the ground, right? And that's important because, and I think a lot of companies would fall into situations where they don't have enough runway. So I think focusing on the runway aspect's important from a sort of capital standpoint and a know-how standpoint. Those two things coincide because again, if you're doing the wrong thing the wrong way, capital's not going to help you, right? So I think those two things sort of coupled together is important, right? The capital creating the runway and then right people doing the right thing the right way to be able to make sure that we're executing on the strategy in the right time. So that's the how to make stuff. And so that requires time, it requires capital, it requires know-how, it requires morphing, as I've said earlier, like looking at what's there and where are we today, where are we trying to get to. It requires listening to the industry, right? To ask people what would you like to see? What's something that you'd like to see in our product that you're not seeing in other products, right? Because that plays right back into the how to make stuff, right? When we listen to people and they say, and that's the other aspect of leadership, I think, is the ability to listen, right? That's super important, right? To really acutely listen to what's happening around you in the space and pay attention. So we really try to ask our customers, our everybody in our ecosystem of like what do you want to see, right? And then bring that back and execute quickly on that ask, right? And that's also what I'd say is an important aspect of modern mill is, we don't have 25 layers of having to get approvals to be able to do something, right? We have a couple of layers and we can move quickly. And I think that's what we've been able to do is address those things. So yeah, so I think that's one aspect. And then pivoting, that's the how to make stuff. Then the how to sell stuff is a whole other aspect, right? Because you've got something that's a new product, totally different than anything that anybody has really seen before. So there's a learning curve associated with it. But the good news is when we demo the product, everybody is like, I love that. Where do I get it? Right. And then we get people that use it and they have these incredible experiences with it. They're like, I mean, I've been into dealers lately close to where I'm at in New Hampshire, where people have told me like, we have builders that only want your product now for siding and for trim and for other things. So that how to sell stuff piece is important. And I would just say that breaks down into resources as well. So people, right, feet on the street. And then obviously there's marketing, there's branding, there's media campaigns, there's other things that go into that. The majority of what we've done up to this point is the how to make stuff side. We're just getting started in the how to sell stuff side, meaning create broader awareness of the product. That being said, we've done a great job creating national distribution within a relatively short period of time. We have amazing distributors that are on board, and we're continuing to see growth and pull through in that channel. So it's happening organically, but we also like to supercharge stuff, and so that's sort of that next level of it.
Up until Acre, we've often said that in order to be new in building products, you need to be 15 years old. And Acre really would be the one exception we've seen probably in the last decade that moved a little faster than that. So kudos to you. I look forward to seeing what the how to sell looks like. And I do think that you have an unnatural advantage compared to what we've seen traditionally in the building product space. If I can flash forward just to make something topical for today. This is an uneducated question, so I apologize if it's a dumb one. But are these tariffs impacting your business in any sort of way?
No, I mean, so we're made in the U.S., right? So that's we're seeing some.
Price slow down anything, or is it not? Is it not even a consideration?
I don't. I mean, that's interesting, right? We haven't really thought too much about that. I think the rice is going to be continue to be grown, and I would say in general, it ebbs and flows each year. So it's not every year that 50% is exported. Some years, some is here. I think there's a big economic aspect of this when buyers and sellers of rice look around the world and they're basing that based off of buy prices, and I'm sure there's contractual, I'm sure there's spot, I'm sure there's all types of things that goes into that. But yeah, we're not hearing anything about rice slowing down. I would say to the opposite, it might actually increase. So the demand U.S. could actually increase because of some of those tariffs. But we're not seeing anything directly impacting from our raw material inputs that would affect what we're doing. And I would just say, in a general sense, again, we're seeing more opportunities come our way because of some of the duty situations that's arisen lately, right? And like I said, we're already competitive to certain types of hardwoods, but if certain types of hardwoods are further subject to duties, that's going to give us a further cost advantage, right? And certainly imported products of other types of composites, we would be advantaged over that. So yeah, we don't see anything adversely affecting it. We would, especially on the manufacturing side, and I would say again, compared to other products, it's probably going to give us an advantage, especially depending on where they're coming from.
So we're 5 years in now, which is, again, so much has been done in 5 years. Congrats again. You mentioned the transition is about how to sell the product. Obviously, you know how to sell the product, how to sell it bigger and better. What's the major focus right now aside from that? And what are you looking at over the next 5 years?
I just think continuing to evolve what we're doing, right? Innovation in the product, right, is probably a big one. Figuring out what other profiles people want to see, right? We're asked quite often, hey, can you do this, that, and the other profile that some of these other competitive composites are doing? Because if, for instance, if you had that, we would exclusively be buying your product. So we've been focused again on the Pareto's aspect of this, what 20 moves the 80. So low hanging fruit, but there's the opportunity now to really start thinking about other profiles, other siding profiles. Like our main sort of siding profile up to this point has been our shiplap siding, our interlocking, but there's innovations that we can make upon that, right? Such as making a thinner profile, making one that's easier to use, potentially looking at other types of products, that other types of siding products that might be out there. And again, it's going to be driven from asking our customers, or listening to the feedback. What do they want to see? But yeah, I would say those are the main things. It's been product innovation is the other side of this. Chandler, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. From a history perspective, like looking back as a salesperson, and when Chris talks about you guys had mentioned like the people, the resources, the personnel, and Chris's leadership, right? And I think you have to look back just to kind of hit on that and where it transitions to where we're at now is you can tell Chris is passionate, right? He's enigmatic and he's a very contagious leader. And I think that was for me as my entry into this was his combination of passion with this product opportunity. I couldn't sleep, right? I mean, for 3 months I pined over it. Chris and I went back and forth, and I was like, I can't not do this, right? Like we talk about that. And then the first two people that were brought on after me are still with us, and they are super passionate. And we found ourselves basically starting from the very first day. People had to be entrepreneurial at all levels, right? And that's on the manufacturing side and the sales side. Chris, you can see, is a serial entrepreneur. And there was just when you're flying the plane as you're building it, you have no choice but to figure it out, and failure is not an option, and that comes from the top down, and it's something that will continue to resonate through, particularly on the sales force. That is something that we pride ourselves on as leaders through the group. We were just at IBS, and Chris is at the demo table demoing material, right? Like our territory managers that we just hired last year are like, man, this is amazing seeing the owner of the company and the leaders of the company rolling up their sleeves and staining boards for builders and having that can-do approach. That said, we've always had to do that. And I think where this next transition, what I'm feeling and what I'm really enjoying is the company and Chris's continued investment in the sales support resources and tools, which is the things that we've been as a salesperson. I worked for a $4 billion company. I worked for a $1 billion company. And I've been with this company for, I think we're coming on 6 years here now in May. We had to figure out how to do it with whatever we had. Like I said, failure wasn't an option. But looking at the Northeast Mid-Atlantic and even going down to the Southeast territories and regions, in the last 2 months, we've added 6 territory managers, an architectural sales rep, and a business development rep which is something that we've always wanted. And when you look back over history and the growth and the speed to market and the adoption and the distribution channel and the dealer channel and all the success we've had, we've done it without that, right? Like this is our first architectural sales rep. And you think about the importance of that for a product like this and all the applications and the opportunity that exists there. So yeah, this next 5 years and the scalability of what Chris was talking about, now it's time to really sell stuff. It's exciting to think that we're kind of just getting started, even though we're not just getting started, but we really are just getting started in terms of scaling this. And like, what's amazing, again, going back from the top, if you're looking at Chris and a lot of the original employees that are, most of whom are still here, there is passion and there is enthusiasm and there is tireless energy, and that rolls right down so that when we, just like we build it to builders, we bring it to a dealer rep, we bring it to distribution partners, whoever we show Anchor to, the light bulb goes off. And so even in the hiring process, like we meet with people and they see it and they're like, oh my God, it just makes sense. And then you just get this employee that comes in, they're excited by the opportunity, and then they see the energy and enthusiasm from the top all the way down. And it's just exciting to see and just know that these people are hitting the ground running, and we're just scaling that aggressively right now, which is super exciting from the sales side.
Very cool. I'm looking forward. I mean, we're all looking forward as it grows, and especially as a partner together.
They're going to see an extra comma potentially in the next 5 years, right? That's a fun thought.
That's a great thought. So I would love to keep asking questions. This is really interesting. We could probably go on for another hours. We do have 3 segments we like to finish the podcast off with. The first one is called Saw It Coming. And we'll talk about a little future stuff here, Chris and Chandler, if you want to chime in. So the first question up for you, Chris. Where do you see the building materials industry in the next 5 years?
I mean, solid, growing. I don't know. I always one of the things I often think about are what are the things I want to be involved with. I always think about food, water, shelter, medicine, right? Like those those are need to haves, not like to have. So we fall into the shelter category. I think, yeah, building materials go forward strong. I think, there's various statistics people cite that, you can, if with any percentage of the population and the planet coming here, we immediately have a massive shortage of housing. So I think building is going to be important. I think bringing sustainable, clean building materials in ones that people throughout the entire ecosystem work with, right? Everybody from the people handling it, cutting it, to the homeowners using it, right? Leveraging potential health benefits, psychological benefits of it, and our product definitely embodies a lot of that. So I think exciting to see the innovation in the future adoption of, I think, more and more sustainable building materials, more and more sort of health driven choice building materials, right? Where there maybe isn't any VOCs or no dust when you cut it, those types of things, and certainly insulation, thermal properties, right? There's going to be all types of innovations that happen like that. So those are all the things we're always thinking about, and where does the industry go, and how do we fit in, and how do we continue to grow within that space? So yeah, I'm bullish on it long term. And again, just from a high level, I think housing is going to continue to be in demand, right? And there's a lot of people in this world. They all need a place to live, and especially in North America, in the United States, it's a place that people want to be, and I think there's a huge opportunity for the years to come.
In our industry, what trends do you think are currently being overlooked that should become major factors?
In our industry, I would just say again the ones I previously mentioned. I think the looking at a building material, and what does the entire sort of footprint of that building material look like? Like how is it to work with? What are the long-term properties of it? Like moving away from the ideas of maintenance. Like if you think about what's one big thing that homeowners don't want to deal with is maintenance, right? You want to be a one and done situation, put up a fence, and then 5 years later have people walking by going, wow, it's amazing. So I think that the no maintenance or the reduced maintenance aspect is, I think there's definitely some other materials that create some aspects to that, but I think we're addressing the broader aspect of that, where you really we have something that's special where it levers that low to no maintenance aspect. So I think that's one that's one industry, that's one aspect of the industry that may have been slightly overlooked. But I think also there's just, a lot of the larger producers are having success with their composites because it is addressing them on some level. It just doesn't address them on the totality of that level. And then again, I think the aspect of, like, we're seeing more and more trends, right? There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of people talking about it, the trends of the health aspects of using various types of materials, right? And especially as you start thinking about bringing stuff inside, especially bringing composite type materials inside. And I would say the other part of this is again to not understand how big deforestation and cutting down old growth trees is. I mean, that's a big issue that would probably is the main point of what do I see as being overlooked. It's that, right? I think there's just this general assumption that I'm always going to be able to get these types of woods I've been able to get, but we've had distributors tell us that, we went through this with redwood, we went through this a little bit with cedar already. We know what's coming, and those times aren't easy when you're heavily dependent upon those materials. So to be able to create a material that can deliver in times throughout, does what doesn't it doesn't matter as the future years roll on, meaning we're going to continue to have the supply, we're going to continue to have rice being produced, so what we're doing just makes sense. But really addressing that old growth piece, I think, is one of the major aspects that the industry is potentially overlooked.
Right. And I agree with that last piece, the old growth trees. That's something that's definitely overlooked, not really talked about. Second segment, material moment. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received in the industry or in general?
The path is straight and narrow, stay the course.
I feel like you've said that.
Persevere.
Yeah. Can you talk about one deal or project that's probably taught you the biggest lesson?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was this property that was somewhere. I think it was in Chandler would probably remember exactly where it was, but maybe somewhere in Long Island or something like that. But there was this. It was a woman who was on the fence of using cedar versus using acre. And I remember at the time the cedar price had gone up quite a bit. So that was that aha moment for us, right? When she pivoted to use acre, and Chandler was involved with this. Chandler might have been the property on Montauk. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but there was this property, and she painted it this beautiful, or stained it this beautiful, like Cape Cod gray. And we would continually hear from her about how amazing the house has performed over the years, and people coming by and asking her what it was. So I think it was that was a big aha moment for us to realize that there's people that they're like, oh, I'm building this relatively expensive house, so of course I want to put cedar on, I want to put some other type of beautiful product on it. And to be able to see them pivot to acre and then use that, and then years later be able to see the performance aspect of it, meaning it still looks the same as when they put it down. They're not worried about scraping it. I don't remember exactly where it was. It might have been near a seaside sort of install, but that's the one that comes to me. Chandler, I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, that was on Montauk, and that was for sure the aha moment, because she was a homeowner in Montauk that had a house completely clad in cedar in a neighborhood with houses completely clad in cedar, and she used a Norwegian woodworker who used acre for the first time and loved it. And she actually told us that she chose acre because she was going to be reincarnated as a tree. So she chose acre. And I told her, I hope you're not going to be reincarnated as rice. But anyways, no, I mean, that was for sure. I mean, that's every square inch of that house, the trim, everything was stained acre. It's a cedar replacement for sure. That was the big moment, right? Going back to the terrace again, like that was a good nudge for us. Previously was, we like to tell people, and Chris had said it, acre is the first wood alternative that is officially good enough for the wood people, and that's exciting.
That's a soundbite. I do agree with that.
Yeah, good point. So our last segment, Chris, it's called Quick Cuts. It's some rapid fire questions. So first thing that comes to your mind when the question's asked, no need to define the answer. Just kind of go quick, whatever your gut answer is. So I'll start. First job you ever had?
Paper route.
Favorite business book that you like to recommend to your employees?
Favorite business book. I don't have any I don't think I have any favorite business books. Yeah, I mean, I remember coming across like the sort of, and I didn't read it, but the general premise of it, it was like the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People or something. It's kind of an old book, but that would be one that comes to mind, but I generally don't recommend it. I would probably recommend other books.
Sure. All right. What book would you recommend?
There you go.
And it can be any
nice
genre.
pivot.
Any genre.
Any genre. Yeah, I mean, I like kind of Eastern philosophy. I think if people are open to it, like a book on Zen or meditation or something like that, I think is really important because I think calm mind, right? In Zen Buddhism is called right thought, right action, right? So it kind of gets back to right people doing the right thing the right way. But I think a fundamental, premise of that is to understand where you're at already, sort of in your headspace, right? So generally speaking, I would recommend something along those lines, some sort of Eastern philosophy or meditation, or something around being present.
Well, Todd has bought me books on Stoicism.
Yeah,
I have yet to read those.
You should read those.
But they're sitting on my shelf. So
slightly different geographic region, but still mainly part and parcel with helping you think and have a calm mind and finding your center.
It shows how much I know where Stoicism comes from. Next question: if you weren't in building materials, what industry would you be in?
Hotels.
Last but not least, who is your favorite building products representative, Chandler or Silas?
Oh man.
We'll skip that one.
Can I say Chandless?
Yeah. What
Chandler
describes your leadership style?
Commitment.
All right. Well, that we have completed probably our longest podcast, which I really appreciate. We got so much good information that we kept it going intentionally. So thank you, Chris, so much. Thank you, Chandler, so much. We really appreciate it. I learned so much. We can definitely do a second podcast because there's so much to learn. You've done so much in 5 years, and we really congratulate you.
Look, in my mind, you have a story of curiosity. You just have a guy who's super interested in figuring things out. You have someone passionate about creating something from nothing. And you look forward 5 years later, and you've manifested this really beautiful company that, in speaking with Chandler and your employees, they seem to love, that the industry is taking really hold of. And it's just very neat. We really appreciate the time getting a chance to talk to you.
Thank you guys. Very much appreciate it.